so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? But purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm Lori LeBay, the host of Alzheimer's Speaks, and I welcome you today. We're going to have a fantastic conversation, and I can't wait to tell you more about a brand new book out called The Alzheimer's Medical Advisor. It really, truly is a caregiver guide. But before I introduce our guest today and get into our line of questions, we always are getting new listeners. And so I like to let people know a little bit about Alzheimer's Speaks, who we are and what we do. And bottom line, we're an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort worldwide. We believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia, that we're going to be able to remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those living with the disease continue to live with purpose, as well as those that are caring for them. Our core belief is really all wrapped in collaboration. We truly feel that's the only way we're going to win this battle, is to get everybody involved, because pretty much everyone is touched by this disease. And they're kind of shocked once the conversation starts. And I know that the collaboration is happening out there. I know it's much slower than I'd like to see it, but I can tell you the wheels are spinning much faster. Just had a conversation with colleagues today about how much really has changed, and it's pretty exciting times. I think that what we're going to see in the next 5 years happening in the area of dementia and caregiving. And these collaborations are really important, and they can be big and they can be small. For example, here at Alzheimer's Speaks, because of your likes, your clicks, your shares with your Twitter tribes, your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn colleagues, your Pinterest peeps, all that social media stuff that just takes us a second to engage has had a huge impact on Alzheimer's Speaks. I truly believe that's why we were named the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. And I also believe that's, how Maria Shriver got a hold of us and called us an architect of change for humanity, was because we are pushing out a lot of different content. Our goal is to raise all voices. So those with dementia, those caring for them, professionals, researchers, advocates, authors, movie directors, singers, songwriters, everybody who has been touched and who is trying to make a difference and has something to say is welcome to be on our show. So if that is you, please reach out to me at Lori@Alzheimer'sSpeaks, and I'd be glad to talk with you. And again, for those of you who continue to share our resources, thank you so much. We have not just the radio show here, but we have the blog, we have Dementia Chats, which are videos where I interview people with dementia. The resources just kind of go on and on. So I won't bore you with all those. Just go to alzheimer'sspeaks.com and you'll be able to find out a little bit more about that. I'd also like to give a shout out to a couple of great partners we have here. One is the Alzheimer's Research Prevention Foundation. They just do phenomenal work. They're located in Arizona, but they have a big impact around the country and around the world, and they're doing some really cool stuff right now with meditation. They really take a holistic approach to the disease. And then I'd also like to give a shout out to the Call Alert Center, which is something very inexpensive, but it's a great tool if you're concerned of anybody ever wandering who has dementia. You can register them for about $15 a year. And if that crisis would occur, you just contact them, and a flyer gets disseminated digitally. They work with the police departments. It's pretty fascinating. They also have ones for pets and children and things too. So it's not just people with dementia who can become lost or disoriented. And last, before I introduce our guests, I just want to remind people that we do have our fabulous cruise to the Bahamas and the Caribbean coming up November 11th through the 18th. And again, that is for people with early to mid memory loss and their care partners. We're getting a lot of families signing up. We have 4 people highlighted that actually are living with dementia who are going to be speakers for our symposium. Harry Urban, Michael Ellenbogen, Lori Shearer, and Mary Reed, along with myself and Cindy Lazinski, who is heading up a dementia-friendly movement in northern Colorado. And we also have Becky Watson with us, who will be a music therapist, which is pretty cool. So we are very excited about that. Again, it's November 11th through the 18th. Again, just go to Alzheimer'sSpeaks.com, and you'll be able to find out more about the cruise. There's a program you can download, and you can get a hold of Kathy Schoaf, who is our travel agent coordinating our group. So we would love for you to join us. So let's move on, because today I'm really excited about this book, and we are so lucky to have Dr. PhilipSloane with us. He is the Elizabeth and Oscar Goodwin Distinguished Professor of Family Medicine and co-director of the program on Aging, Disability, and Long-Term Care at the Cecil G. ShepsCenter for Health Services and Research at the University of Northern Colorado at Chapel Hill. His clinical work and research has included a strong emphasis on Alzheimer's disease for decades, and he co-developed A Bathing Without a Battle and Mouth Care Without a Battle, which were both 2 nationally recognized programs to teach techniques of person-centered care. And boy, I wish I would have known about that with my mom. And maybe we'll get into that conversation even a little later, though our main focus is going to be his new book. He has just received lots of accolades, and in 2004, he received the Pioneer Award from the National Alzheimer's Association. So again, today we're going to be talking about his brand new book, The Alzheimer's Medical Advisor. And it's a caregiver guide to common medical and behavioral signs and symptoms in persons with dementia. So welcome today. How are you, Dr. Sloane?
I'm great. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Sunrise River Press too for printing this book. When I got it delivered and I sat down in my house, I literally said, "Wow!" to myself. This is really designed very well, and it's going to be easy for people to use. So, why don't you give us a little history? A lot of times I ask my guests, have you personally been touched by dementia in your family or circle of friends at all? People like to know that, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure. I do want to say one thing, though. I probably made a mistake in saying that I was from UNC, because it turns out there are 2 UNCs.
Oh.
There's University of Northern Colorado, which I'm not from, and University of North Carolina, which I am from. And so I just wanted to correct that on the basis of, for my school. But to return to your question, every family has people with cognitive impairment, dementia. My mother died at age 98, and the doctor put in the death certificate Alzheimer's disease, and my brother was very upset. She didn't have Alzheimer's disease. Well, she certainly had some memory loss, and she was able to maintain her values and maintain her sense of humor, but she had cognitive impairment as well.
Mm-hmm.
My father-in-law, we had here in town with us for many years, and he had, as a doctor, and I have to argue about what the diagnosis was. It was probably a vascular dementia rather than Alzheimer's disease, but regardless, he had many of the same issues, and so he also has passed away.
Okay. So definitely been touched by it in your own family. Why don't you talk to us about your book here and give us maybe a little better understanding of why you've done research in the area of caregivers of people, with Alzheimer's or different types of dementia. And what have you learned through your research?
Well, people who work with folks with Alzheimer's disease realize that caregiving is different when someone has a cognitive problem and has difficulty making decisions, because it means that the caregiver themselves has to manage not just the Alzheimer's disease, but other things, medical problems, and behavioral symptoms and things that are just what we call non-specific problems. And so, for example, if someone has high blood pressure or heart disease or lung disease, the caregiver has to take over management of these conditions and has to make sure medications are purchased and taken correctly, schedule doctor appointments, monitor things like blood pressure and weight. And then another thing is that going to the doctor or the emergency department, it's often not a simple matter. People with dementia can refuse to go, they get agitated when they get there, have bad events happen because of confusion. And in this context, the average, we did some research and we found that in a 6-month period, the average person with dementia will require the family caregiver to manage 7 new or worsening symptoms. So stuff is coming up, caregivers have to do things with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot, and I think it's something that people really don't understand or appreciate really until it hits them. And one of the things I hear from people is that are caring for a loved one with dementia, they don't know how to explain what it is they even do or what their life is like, because it's so different, and people try to make almost excuses going, oh, well, I lose my keys, or I do this, or and they feel almost minimalized or marginalized in that conversation, that it's just uncomfortable for others to talk about. And so it's like, well, we'd rather just pretend that everything's okay, and then we don't have to go deep at all, with it. And that really doesn't help anybody. We all know that Alzheimer's can really lead to a lot of different type of behavioral symptoms that aren't necessarily medical symptoms. What are your thoughts regarding that line? Because there's such controversy now over medication and do you give it for a behavior? Is it a behavior, or do we need to start calling it a reaction? Because we all have reactions. We just call it a behavior when we don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, behavioral symptoms, I'd like to call them behavioral symptoms because they're symptoms of some underlying need or some underlying feeling or some underlying kind of emotion. And so they're not behaviors, they're representing something else. And often what family members have to do is they have to be detectives because they have to figure out what that something else is. And one of the tough things is that behavioral symptoms may occur for medical reasons, or they can occur because of an underlying kind of anxiety or because of physiological need. And so it turns out that behavioral symptoms are just one type of symptoms, but in fact, they all have to be thought of as possibly due to a whole variety of things. In our research, we divided symptoms into what we call organ-specific symptoms. If somebody has diarrhea, you kind of know what part of the body it's coming from. If somebody has a red eye, you kind of know what part of the body. So they're coming from organ system. And then we have the behavioral symptoms, which are exactly what we talk about. They're things like you're getting more confused or agitated or having delusions, getting aggressive with care providers. And then the third category of symptoms are what we call non-specific symptoms. So in our research, we've learned a lot about these. And one of the things we found is that when we followed these caregivers, we followed 146 caregivers for 6 months. 90% reported organ-specific symptoms that they had to deal with within that 6 months. 89% reported behavioral symptoms they had to deal with. And 88% reported non-specific symptoms. I'm talking about new or worsening. I mean, they've already been dealing with these. And so what it means is that everybody has to deal with these different classifications. And so we've done a lot of kind of work around that. And we, for example, divide the behavioral symptoms into what we call active behaviors and passive behaviors.
Uh-huh.
And active ones are things like hitting or collaring or asking questions or doing things. And some people will say, sometimes maybe that's not such a bad thing because at least the person is expressing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the passive behaviors are things like withdrawal or kind of just not drinking or not eating, not doing things. And those often don't, when you look on the web or look for materials for caregivers, there's a lot of stuff about dealing with active symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do about agitation? What do you do about wandering? The passive symptoms don't get much attention, but it turns out they often are associated with kind of a significant problem, whether it's depression or whether it's a new medical problem, pain, this type of thing. And so one of the things I like to emphasize is just because somebody's not kind of in your face causing a problem doesn't necessarily mean that there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third category, I just want to say a minute about the non-specific ones. They're the toughest of all. We don't know what it is. We don't know if it's an emotional thing or if it's a medical thing. Let's say somebody is not eating well, but they don't feel like eating, and figuring out what to do with that is one of the toughest things that caregivers face.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I mean, you hear that from people all the time going, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's causing this. And, it's an avalanche of stress that takes over the care partner and, isn't healthy for the person who is exhibiting the behaviors because, something's wrong and something isn't clicking there. How is having dementia in these types of symptoms, the active, the inactive, and the nonspecific, how is that different from, other diseases in terms of learning to manage as a care partner and as a person maybe with the disease?
Mm-hmm. I think the difference is for the caregiver more so than for the person, because we all have this kind of thing. You got a headache. It's probably actually headache is more nonspecific because anything can cause a headache in a way. But if you've got abdominal pain, it's probably not coming from your head. It's probably not coming from your foot. And we do a lot of that sorting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We think about it. But when you're working with someone who has dementia, especially as it becomes advanced, the communication is real indirect and it's often not very clear. And so the whole communication issue makes caregiving very difficult, this whole being like a detective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really believe in Alzheimer's and other dementias, non-specific symptoms then become more and more common. Somebody they're not moving around today. So what's that about? And sometimes they can tell you, and sometimes it's not real clear. Another thing that's real difficult for caregivers is the whole issue of kind of the behavioral responses, because they're often unexpected. Somebody becomes irritated if you're asking them questions, or they become agitated if you're trying to do something to help them. And if somebody's neck hurts, for most of us, a massage, well, it depends. At least we can say whether a massage will be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But in some other work, we found that the physical act of touching someone with Alzheimer's disease has to be done with care. Because if they don't know why you're touching, if you just come up and you touch them from behind, they can get really agitated.
Yeah.
And so, that the simplest things that we normally do, we have to do with more care.
Yeah.
I think probably we're talking about is kind of how to assess these kinds of things. Now you did this, you work with your mom for a long time?
My mom had dementia for 30 years. So she started having symptoms in her mid-50s and lived to 86.
Mm-hmm. So you went through kind of the whole course.
Oh, the whole gamut, yeah.
From when she could tell you maybe even too much to when it got harder and harder to know what she was saying.
Exactly. I found I really had to learn to rely on nonverbals, which I didn't realize I wasn't doing a good job at. And that, the more I researched it, kind of shocked me, because more than 3/4 of our communication is nonverbal. And I think, I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of us have learned to push it away because we're moving so fast trying to get tasks done. And we're not being present enough to just observe. And like you said, be an investigator, get the sheriff's hat out and try to figure out, what's the pattern here? What's caused this? Instead, we make judgments and we're looking for kind of a quick fix, and we're missing some of the processing time. And that was one of the biggest lessons I think I learned, was to slow down, shut up, observe, and really process. It didn't need to be fixed immediately, but really try to go for the right thing instead of a quick thing. And that was a big difference for me.
And that's such a good point, that sometimes just letting time help make the decision for you is a real useful thing. Although it can be scary. We know in the caregivers we work with, before we developed a book, I should mention, we developed a website, and we spent years developing it, making it evidence-based, and we had a whole bunch of people, including a lot of students, work on kind of assembling the evidence. What we found is that if people had the information in front of them, caregivers, it improved their confidence. It made them feel better about doing the job, which is a really important thing, because it's not easy on your confidence to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's, because you're never 100%, accurate.
No.
And yet you're almost always doing a better job than anybody else would possibly do.
But one of the things too that I learned through my journey was that I always thought things had to be like perfect, that I had to have the perfect answer and do everything just right. And yet in the rest of my life, as much as I might strive for that, I knew it wasn't. And yet I added this extra pressure as a care partner to be more perfect. And I, when I analyze that, I think, I don't know if it was subconscious or conscious, but I knew that there were more eyes looking at me, watching how I was caring for my mom. And I think unconsciously I knew there was more judgment coming from that place too, which was kind of interesting, because I do think that it impacts us in terms of what we do and how we do it. And some people do really well at tests when they're under pressure, and others freak out and don't get one thing right. And so that pressure, I think, affects all of us in a different fashion. So, yeah, I'm really interested in learning, what you feel some of the toughest situations are for a family, and how do they face them? How do they deal with them? Can you give us some examples?
Sure. I think some of the toughest things are things that people just don't understand, for example, in the behavioral realm, if a person fights their care, such as bathing or changing clothes, figuring out what to do and kind of how to make it go more smoothly is one of many challenges. Another common situation family caregivers face is this whole thing about, could it be a urine infection? There's a kind of general, and we're beginning to realize it's more of a myth than you would like to believe, that anything could be a urine infection. Well, it turns out we overtreat urine infections because people think that way. And so now trying to figure out, is it an infection that's developing, or is it just they're having a bad day? Another common thing, because injuries, we have in our research, we learned what were the most common things that presented and or that led to trips to the emergency department. And skin injuries were way up on the list. And so, or just falling, somebody falls and they hurt, and the family member has to say, is the person injured badly enough to spend 6 hours in the emergency department getting an x-ray, or can I just sit on it for a little bit? And if they go to the emergency room, then emergency department is like, how do you keep the person from making a scene? And So that's a tough thing for family members. And anything having to do with falls, injury, this type of thing. And then another one kind of high on my list is very advanced disease. When the person, there's no single pattern, but when the person doesn't communicate very well and they can't move around much, they may be bedridden, chair-bound, may not respond that much to the environment, may not know you by name. And a tough issue is whether to advise treatment or refuse treatment, or have an evaluation, when any new symptom arises, and kind of how to deal with things kind of as the journey is getting near its conclusion. Those are all tough things, and there's plenty more.
Well, and I think with those two, it's so critical for families to have conversations ahead of time. With my mom, we did the healthcare directives, and we sat down and we had those tough conversations about life and about death, and how did she want that to look? What did she want treatment for? What didn't she want treatment for? And then, did she want, a do not resuscitate? Do we give her a shot if she gets pneumonia towards the end to get rid of the pneumonia so she can live longer in her end stages? We had those tough conversations. And I remember even, putting my mom on hospice and kind of going through all the paperwork again with the nurse where my mom lived. And even though my mom was sleeping and didn't communicate much at all, when the nurse left the room, I, just full of tears said, "Ma, did I do the right thing?" And I knew what she wanted. We had these discussions, but I just needed to hear her voice again. And out of this dead sleep, my mom turned, looked at me square in the eye and went, "Yep," and went right back to sleep. And that's all she said. But she just knew that I needed that reassurance in that moment, that that's what she wanted. And that was a gift. Not everybody can do that, but I really encourage people to have these conversations, when things start out, when it's early onset, because we don't have these tough conversations. And if we don't take the time to do them early, we can't necessarily meet their needs because we don't even know what they are. And
that's so right, because the principle we talk about is substituted judgment. If you have to make a judgment for them, your judgment really is about how they would want to decide if they could, and you have to know what they think, what they believe. Go ahead.
Exactly. And it's, I was shocked at some of the things my mom told me. I had no idea, even like for burial, did she want to be cremated or not? That surprised a lot of people, her answer, and it was like, well, that's a pretty important piece, of end of life, to be able to get that right. and I think, I've seen a lot of families struggle way long after someone has passed with still questioning, did they do the right thing? Did they honor them properly? Because they really don't know, because they didn't have those conversations. And that's a lot of guilt to carry around that we don't need to.
Yes, well, that's a whole other issue, because it's the best caregivers who tend to still have guilt, because they care.
Yep. I agree with you there. You had mentioned, some of the symptoms that you saw were, the falls and the skin care and things like that. It's hard when somebody falls and you know there's some swelling, that it hurts. You don't know if it's broken, but you brought up some really good points of, do they have the stamina, and do you have the stamina to withstand 6 hours in the waiting room, trying to figure out and trying to make them understand, why they can't go home and why people are behaving the way they are, and, why they're at the hospital to begin with. And I know a lot of that stuff just caused my mom a lot of angst. And, yes. And sometimes it's kind of funny, because I think of myself, I'd probably be the last person to bring myself to the hospital. Oh, we'll just wait for the swelling to go down. Get me some ice. I'll put my foot up, and yet I'm pushing somebody else out the door because of my fear of what could be. Yet I'm not doing what I would probably do for myself. And again, with somebody with dementia, you might not always be able to get them to stay still and to not mobilize, a leg or a foot or an arm if you're worried that something could be broken or fractured. So, you have to take all that into account. And but knowing your person, and even just having a little travel bag in case there are incidents like that of what brings them calmness. So maybe it's an iPad with some music on it. Maybe it's a picture book. It could be a zillion different things, but having something like that at the ready can really save you,
Yes.
or an extra set of clothes, or, whatever it might be. And, those are things that you can just kind of have in your car, anytime you're going out, because we don't always know when situations like that are going to arise. But if you're going to the doctor, the hospital, having that stuff ready, almost kind of like, your baby bag, if someone's going to have a baby, they have that bag waiting, in the midst. And not that you want to set yourself up for a hospital run, but, it's a heck of a lot easier to be prepared and to think of that stuff, or to even have medical records and medications, if you've got them taken in your phone, so you've got pictures of them. So when you're doing intake, or if you have a list you can just grab and bring, those are things that we should be thinking about, because, if we're anxious in that process, they're just going to mirror that back to us on top of what they're already feeling. And so whatever can keep us as care partners calm will help them too.
That's so true. Yes. In fact, we have, in developing materials for caregivers, we're going to just focus on how to manage things at home and how to make decisions at home. But we realized that there's more than that. You need some guidance on what to do if you're going to the emergency department, or going to the hospital, or having surgery, and these kinds of things, because it really is an all-encompassing issue. And what you don't want is to have a really bad visit to the emergency department before you think about, maybe I should have brought this, or maybe I should have done that. And that's what you're talking about, being prepared in advance. Really does help.
Yeah, we have a dementia-friendly group in Roseville, Minnesota, and they, in fact, I was on the committee. We just developed a whole kind of travel kit, but it's for travel local or international. It doesn't make any difference. And we've broken it down in terms of documents that you should just always have with you, from little cards that are very common that say, I'm traveling with a person with dementia, or, I have dementia, please be patient with me. But what we did on the backside was we put contact information, because if you were in a car accident, people wouldn't know if somebody had dementia. They wouldn't know if you're a care partner for somebody, or if you had a heart attack. And so that person still needs to be covered. So for the care partner, we wrote something like, I'm Sally May, and I'm a care partner for Joe May. If I become incapacitated, please reach out to, Sally, whatever, and here's her phone number. So that there's an easy connect. And for the person with dementia, it just says that, I've got dementia and this person is caring for me, and here's their contact number if I look vulnerable or I'm struggling. So just real simple things. And then we took medical information and, tried to condense that so it's simple in terms of what types of diagnoses people might have, what kind of medication they're on, but even, do they speak English? Do they speak at all? How's their eyesight? Do they have a hearing aid? Do they have, dentures? All of those things come into play for communication. And stuff. And so that is all free. If people go to the city of Roseville, Minnesota's site, and then you go under resident services, there's a page for Alzheimer's disease, and you can go through the programming and find kind of the I think we called it the Memory Minders Travel Kit or something like that. And if you can't find it there, just give me a holler, and because we want to share that with the world and let people know what's out there. And if there's changes that you suggest to it, let us know, because we want to always improve that, but we want it accessible, for people out there.
How do you spell the name of that town?
Roseville, it's R-O...
Just like a rose.
Yep. Roseville.
Got it.
Yep. Yep. So, and we just sent that information along with some other information out to all the memory cafes too. And if you're interested in that, Dr. Sloane, I can just forward that to you.
That'd be nice.
Okay, I will get that to you. Not a problem. Let's keep going here. I think, gosh, there's just so much to cover. You know, you have spent so many years developing resources for families, you know, on how to basically care better and how to manage things better and you've incorporated a lot of this into your new book. Why don't you tell people why you wrote the book and how it's organized? I was just, like I said, I'm so impressed with this book. First, it's nice and big, and it's got decent sized print, and it's got little call out boxes, and it's, I mean, when you open a page, you know what you're going to get. It's easy to decipher, and I really appreciate the time and thought that went into that. But why don't you tell people a little bit about the book and why you felt it necessary to even publish?
Well, we found that about a third of caregivers of persons with dementia don't use the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew that there was an audience there that really wanted to use something. Our guidance for the whole process really was an advisory group we put together with the help of people from the Duke Alzheimer's Support Program.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 9 caregivers of persons with dementia at various stages of the illness who met with us every month. And essentially, we would tell them what we were thinking, and they would tell us, they would respond to it. Mm-hmm. And so from that, many of the ideas for the book generated from that group. For example, we have a 1-pager in there that puts most of the medical information on a single page where they could write it down. And it's sort of like what you talked about with Roseville, except you got some functional stuff that's kind of nice that we don't have, but still. They wanted a 1-pager that they could just stick on the refrigerator and grab it if they had to go somewhere. That had all the kind of contact information. Mm-hmm. That's something we didn't think of it. We did the sections on how to, what to do in the emergency department or what to do in the hospital because they recommended it. Initially, we were going to focus on giving caregivers tools they needed to feel more confident making decisions about things like somebody fell down or somebody cut themselves or somebody has diarrhea, what to do. Mm-hmm. And so a major part of the book is 2 pages on over 50 different common symptoms and signs that people have, like diarrhea or falls or this type of thing. And within each, we wanted to give caregivers information about what to look for, what's important to look for, what are signs that it could be an emergency, and what are signs that you might be able to manage it at home. And then we provide tips, actually pretty specific instructions on what to do, how to manage it at home. And then we also try to have a little focus on how the caregiver themselves can stay safe or free of illness, because if caregivers aren't careful or mindful, they can get themselves in trouble, and that doesn't help anybody.
Exactly, and that's a very overlooked so much of the time. We're not a society that really thinks about staying healthy ourselves. We really, in many ways, focus on caring for someone else, and it's like a win-lose situation. It's either us or them, instead of everybody has to stay healthy and balanced and in the equation, or it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. And so then as we were developing the book, we wanted to work with a graphic designer, and we found somebody gave me a recommendation. This is someone who has done materials for the National Institute on Aging, and so we knew they were good. And it's a woman in New Mexico who was just fabulous to work with. We made an initial version of the book, printed it ourselves, and had 50 caregivers use it for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then we got their feedback. And once again, we found it proved their confidence. They loved it. And we made some revisions based on that. And the other thing I should mention is, and when we talked to, because we've done so much research on this, we've got a lot of information from different sources. One of the things we did, we talked to about 200 physicians that work with older people, and we asked, what doesn't happen when you talk to caregivers on the phone at home that you wish would happen? And they said, if they're in a nursing home or they're in the office, we can get their vital signs, but caregivers don't necessarily know how to systematically, check their temperature, know what their normal is, because it tends to be lower than younger adults. Check their breathing rate, check their pulse, check their blood pressure, if especially if they have a blood pressure problem, because it turns out that what medical people do is the vital signs is the best single source of information to tell them if somebody is really sick or not, how urgent it is. And so we develop materials. We work with a really nice company that does very good video work. And we've got video materials that are available on the web. And the book gives the website so that people can access them and get that information as well. And we've got tips on how to detect dehydration or how to detect pain. So some other tools to help family members essentially be better at making decisions.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. I did not realize that you had some video there, so that's fantastic to have. Can you talk about maybe some of the basics here? And you've got this kind of color coded at the top from. You've got the blue section, and then you've got the green section, and then you have kind of the red or rust section. Can you talk about those three sections and why you sectioned them off the way you did?
Well, that's what our graphic designer did.
Okay.
And I don't have the book in front of me, so you have to tell me what color it is. But the biggest section is really the series of 2 pages about signs and symptoms, like abdominal pain, and they are in alphabetical order, so they have one color.
Okay. And
then there's another color for the how to work with the medical providers in different medical settings, and that's kind of the next section. And I believe that the other color is kind of for the other sections we have.
Okay. Yeah, because at the end it looks like you've got kind of an end of life, and you're talking about anything from hospitals to surgeries to in-home care,
right.
Emergency contacts, primary providers, and so it's really kind of that whole healthcare system in itself. And then you've got a section on medication safety and management, which I think is so critical. That people
right. That's one we did kind of near the end, again, because the caregivers, actually people who were using it, wanted that section. And so we've got things like pictures of different types of pills, not to identify an exact pill, but be able to describe what it is. And then a lot of information about medicines that are specifically used for Alzheimer's and other dementias, and kind of things like how can, should you or should you not disguise medicine, what to do when somebody doesn't want to take it, and things like that. They're tough issues.
Yeah.
Very tough stuff.
Yeah. Well, and then you've got, this section on, where you really do break down taking a pulse and blood pressure and dehydration, which is just such a huge, huge issue for so many. They don't want to drink a lot because then they'll have to go to the bathroom a lot, and they might not make it, and then it just, there's a whole spiral with that section as well. Like I said, I thought this was just laid out really nice with your topics, and you've got possible signs of emergencies, other signs, tips for providing relief at home, basic facts about things, what to watch out for. Taking care of your own safety. I mean, it's a very easy read, and it's a book that I think will kind of almost be the new Bible for some people to have close to them, in terms of in terms of use there. I love also how you've got some stuff in here about how to help someone go from sitting to standing so that nobody gets hurt. And some strategies there, because I think there's a lot of falls that can happen for both the person with dementia and the person caring for them. That can really be thrown for a loop in that situation. So it's a fantastic book, and one I think that really fills a gap of need out there. So kudos to you for all the work that you've done in accumulating all of this research and putting it together in an easy-to-read fashion for people.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really quite fantastic. And again, I so appreciate it being oversized. Sometimes people try to make it small so it fits in a purse, but realistically, how many people are carrying, a medical book in their purse, with them?
Well, we had a little battle with the publisher about it because they wanted to make it smaller, and then once they really looked at it, they said, no, that doesn't. And it's a real credit to them that they wanted to keep it so that it would best meet the needs of the consumer.
Well, and that's what it should do. That's really what it should do. The only thing that I would say, if you can, and this is a publisher thing too, with a book like this, I think it needs a wider margin in the bend, in the fold, because for some people it's hard for them to kind of pull those pages apart, and as eyesight declines, it's just it's just more difficult for people to read sometimes when it's curved. But again, I know publishers, that's not their status and they don't like it, but times are changing and it's time to change and really understand who the audience is. You also have room on these pages for people to take some notes. You've got some white space in there, which I appreciate too. And I think Care Partners will like that as well, because I see a lot of books where they highlight and make notes, and that's one of the things they comment about, being user-friendly. So good job. Do you have plans for anything else after this one, or anything else in the works?
Oh, not on this particular topic. We work in some other areas as well. We are Bathing Without a Battle. We just have finished doing a Spanish version for caregivers whose Spanish is their primary language. And that's mainly for people, if family members at home are pretty good at figuring out how to do bathing, although some of them can use some specific techniques, but particularly ones in settings like nursing homes really need some help. And so that was a labor of love getting that on the web. It's on the web now. People can take it for free. You just Google Bathing Without a Battle, and there's a whole 3-hour training on different methods of bathing people with Alzheimer's disease. We've got 3 years of kind of free, we can give continuing education credits and all this thanks to the Retirement Research Foundation. And I should mention that the National Institutes on Health helped us with resources for this book. So the world out there is helping. We just need more of it.
Yep. Well, in the Bathing Without a Battle, I wish I would have known about that early on with my own mom, because she used to love the water, and then all of a sudden she just hated it and couldn't figure out why. And Teepa Snow was actually one who had told me that people lose a lot of their fat pads, even if they're heavy, they still lose their fat pads and their nerves are closer. And so that pounding of the water, hurts many of them. And so I remember going to the nursing home and saying, I want to change out all of your shower heads to rain handheld shower heads. And that just made a significant difference, with her, along with starting at the feet instead of stopping at the top where they're cold, and dripping and just getting them used to the water. And there's just so many things, like you said, that could be done that, I didn't know to do, or having a towel around them if they're cold and let them have the towel on them.
Yeah.
you know?
You would love that training then, because we have it's all based on videos we did with caregivers and people with Alzheimer's, and we've got lots of before and after videos, and it's really pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, wonderful. And the do you know what the URL is for them to go to be able to get the videos?
What I do is I Google bathing without a battle.
Okay.
And it'll come right up.
Okay. But you also said that you had some videos to go with the book for like taking pulse and things like that.
Yes, if you look in the section where we have, how to take vital signs,
Mm-hmm.
on the book, on the first page, in pretty big type, it has a URL.
Okay. So I just have to look for it. It's probably right in front of my face. That would be typical for me. And I'm not seeing it because I'd love to be able to give that out to people. But again, if you go and purchase the book, you will have that all at your ready there. And that's something that we can probably add. I am not seeing it, but
It's actually on the page before the discussion starts. There's a I guess it's a topic page. Usually have a quote or something like that. I think that's what we put in the bottom of the next page. I'm sorry,
nope, that's okay. That's okay. I'm just not seeing it.
I'll send it to you.
Oh, wait, here it is. Videos at Wyatt found it. It's ALZMed, ALZ med MED dot UNC.edu/videos. So ALZMED dot UNC.edu/videos. So that's great. And then the best way for people to get a hold of you, Dr. Sloane, is that through your email address?
Or else through the Department of Family Medicine at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Okay.
Either way.
Okay, and that is listed both are listed on the website there. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was just great to chat and to learn more about you and your history and all the research that you're doing and how you are really helping move dementia care forward. Very much appreciate all your work.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Great, thank you. For those of you listening who are new to our channel, you might want to check out Alive and Social, a show that is called What's for Dinner Tonight with Rachel Perrin, who is a culinary director for Kowalski's Market. They come up with a great conversation, and it's just a short podcast, only 10 or 15 minutes, about ideas of what to make for dinner. And they also have a great website for seasonal menus as well at Kowalskis.com. That's KOWALSKIS.com. Again, I want to remind people it's not too late to sign up for our dementia-friendly cruise, November 11th through the 18th. You can just go to Alzheimer's Speaks on our homepage and click on the tabs for projects and initiatives, and then go to our cruise page. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're really getting a wonderful response around the country. As far as our shows go here on Alzheimer's Speaks, everything is archived. We've been doing this for 6 years, so we have tons of great information that's available for you. Our last Dementia Chats that was published was on dementia and depression, grief, sadness, and loneliness, and really an interesting conversation. And again, our experts on Dementia Chats all have dementia. And so they really give us some great, great insights. Those are all free. And again, you can find those on Alzheimer's Speaks initiatives and projects page. I'm going to be doing some upcoming screenings of the film His Neighbor Phil. Both right now are in Minnesota. On the 18th, I'm going to be at Bellray Senior Living. On the 31st, I'm going to be at Silver Creek on Main in Maple Grove. On the blog, you might want to check out a beautiful poem about Alzheimer's that a wife wrote about her husband. There's also an interesting post about Independence Day and what does that make you think of. It has been wonderful chatting with you all. If you are looking for a memory cafe, which is for people with early memory loss and their care partners, please check them out. You can, again, find the Memory Cafe on our site. Again, go to the Projects and Initiatives page, and there's one for memory cafes, and scroll down. You'll see a big kind of purple-pink country, and you click on that, you'll be brought to Calendar Cards, who has made, I think, one of the best directories and easy to find directories to find if there is a memory cafe close to you. And last, I just want to let you know we also have our helpful tip sheet out. And if you are interested in that, just shoot me an email at lori@alzheimer'speaks.com. It has, it's a trifold, and it just is loaded with great information. Thanks so much, and look forward to talking to you next time. Bye, everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors. From fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.